Hello, welcome. It's Thursday. It's time for our table talk, and today we are so excited to be discussing the pattern of late. And we specifically chose this topic because this came at high demand from a lot of our regular guests on our table talks. So we thought, okay, this is a theme. Let's dive into it. So Leslie Brown, a partner at Expanding You, along with our co-founders Jeff Brown and Lynn Samita, are really excited to walk you all through just what happens when patterns like lateness show up in our lives, understanding what's really happening and what we can do about it. And the reason why we're so passionate about having these bi-weekly table talks is because at Expanding You, we really do believe in creating meaningful change in the world. And we know that the best, most powerful way to do that is for us to do that by harnessing the power of community, right? And when we harness the power of community, we empower ourselves and others to show up with more joy, love, and courage so that we can live a full and beautiful life. So without further ado, let's dive into our topic of I'm late. It's not you, it's your mind. Over to you, Lynn.
Uh, Actually, I'm going to start with this, Leslie.
Great, Jeff.
So yeah, we're looking at lateness and how our mind creates the lateness. And I'm going to start off by just sharing an example for myself. A week ago or so, I had an appointment that I was going to, and so I was grabbing my keys and heading out the door. I saw my plants, and I was like, "Oh, I was going to water the plants yesterday. I got to water them now." And so, of course, I go and get the water, start watering my plants. While I'm watering my plants, I remember I was supposed to reply to an email. And I'm like, oh, I got that email. And then I remember looking at the time going, okay, yeah, I got time. Off I go, do the email, and then scoot out the door. While I'm driving now, it's apparent I'm going to be late for my appointment. And so using our work, I started reflecting on like, all right, how'd I get here? What was my thinking that got me in this position? And as I slowed things down and backtracked, I realized, oh yeah, I was thinking, if I don't do it now, I'm going to forget. And that belief was driving my behavior. So Lynn's going to go into some content to teach about how all this works inside of us.
And certainly starting with just what Jeff, you've shared, because we're seeing how things unfold, which is so cool because all behavior, everything we do, everything we think has a purpose. So all of our programs start with that presupposition, so to speak, that there's a purpose for every single thing we do. But today we're going to look more closely at actually how the mind functions and operates with what we're trying to do. And so we're going to be looking at those patterns. And so with any behavior, there's obviously a benefit. Jeff's plants got watered. They're happy. He sent the email. Somebody else might be happy. But there's also a cost. And so we're going to dive into that. And we're also going to look at timing. Have you noticed that you remember things almost at the worst moment, the last minute, the just before you walk out the door, as Jeff described? That's really interesting. And it's a function of how our brain is operating. So we're kind of keen to see how this resonates for you. So we'd like you to think of just what it's like when you are in the mindset of, I have to get going. I've got to get moving here. So just close your eyes for a moment and think of what that's like when you're in that energy of, I've got to get stuff done, or I've got to get going. And notice how many things come up. Would you put in the chat? Is it 1? Is it 5? Yeah, just take a moment to just notice when you think that way of, okay, I gotta get going. I gotta get a move on. Okay.
Shirley saying many. I am sitting here with a literal laundry list that just isn't ending.
So the second part is, how are you feeling when that starts to happen? The list starts appearing, and it's like a scrolling list is what I get from Leslie. It's not even stopping.
Hmm.
What's the feeling? Put that in the chat, how you feel when your system starts to surface all those things.
You know, Lynn, and I'm just wrote it down myself and asking myself, what do I have to get going on?
Yeah.
And then immediately it's like, oh yeah, I got to get the garbage. Oh yeah, I got my laundry sitting. Like, oh yeah, and immediately my mind starts grabbing all these things, which of course, as I do it, it starts to bring some anxiety. And then if I keep going, I know where it goes to. I get overwhelmed.
Right.
Yeah.
And what started it all is your brain and your mind are sensing urgency. It's listening to you. What do I need to get going on? And from its perspective, now we're into urgency, and it's going to give you everything it possibly can, in a sense, to get its to-do list off.
Mhm.
So there's a really interesting thing called RAS, Reticular Activating System, which is a very fancy phrase. But boy, did I recognize it when I was pregnant. Because what it says is, when there's something on your mind, you're going to notice more of that. Whether it's you're buying a car and suddenly you're noticing that kind of car, or even you're noticing red cars because you're considering, could you be bold enough to go red? And when I was pregnant, it was like, where did all these pregnant people come from? I didn't notice them before at all. That's how our brain is working. It's looking for similarity, and it's looking for patterns and connecting the dots. So that sense of urgency triggers all of that, and the system goes into hyperdrive, if you like.
Mhm.
Well, now we want to link it to our stuck triangle. Some of you will remember that we often love diagrams that let us see really clearly how a pattern works. So this is our stuck triangle. And it operates with three different components. It starts with a belief or a thought. So when we listened to Jeff, he had, some thoughts going on. I need to water the plants. But really, the key thought that kept him in this triangle was, I have enough time. That thought and belief allowed him to go to the next item on his mind's list. So he does that. It then creates the pattern of him attending to tasks, and creates and proves a belief. Now, the tricky bit in this one is, the belief is I have enough time, but in fact, it's enough time to do the activity, but not to be on time. His mind has lost track of being on time. And so he's going to get stuck in this triangle of being a little late or a lot late when he uses that belief that I've got enough time. And then he'll miss what he really wanted in the beginning, was to get out the door on time.
Well, and Lynn, I just want to add to this, because
Yeah.
you grabbed a different belief that I actually had said as well that was
Oh,
in there.
do,
The underpinning belief was, if I don't do it, I'll forget. And then that led me to
right,
the reoccurring behaviors of trying to get a bunch of things done before I go. But I
right.
also did, in that, once that belief arose, the next loop around is I did say, yeah, I think I got enough time. And so then I actually had two different triangles looping.
That's right.
Yeah.
Complementing the ultimate pattern
Yeah.
of running out of time, AKA being late.
Exactly.
So anytime we get stuck in a pattern, there's going to be a way of thinking, what we call a belief, that creates the pattern and then proves that it's happening. Okay, so that's our stuck triangle. Now, let's talk about what are some beliefs that we might hold. Like Jeff said, a great one. If I don't do it now, I'll forget. Okay, very, very common. Another belief people have, which Jeff also used, is they actually think they have enough time. So there is what I would say is a slight distortion of how long things take. So they hold on to a belief, I've got enough time to do one more thing. Another one people often believe is they're actually not good at managing time. So now, if I believe I'm not good at managing time, the system almost surrenders even trying. And it goes ahead with that, as Leslie said, unfolding to-do list that never ends. So those are 3 common beliefs that people have. And there's lots more that people can have around what keeps them stuck. Like, I never get through my to-do list, so I might as well just do what I can. There's another belief that keeps us in a stuck loop. The other thing is, why are those beliefs so strong? Like, even when we get evidence, no, Jeff, you don't have enough time. Jeff, you're actually not good at gauging how much time you need. How come this very intelligent man keeps doing the same pattern? Well, the truth is, for his nervous system and his mind, he has examples of if I don't do it now, I'll forget. So it remembers those times you did forget. And so it's not going to let go of that belief easily because it's trying to protect you and make sure that you don't forget things that are important. So anytime when you find a belief that you recognize is part of creating a pattern of lateness, you can just know it got implanted, if you like, or locked in much earlier in your life. Yeah. Okay. So, and that creates part of what we call a reinforcing pattern or loop. So easily people I talk to will often say, I'm not good with time. Or, I'm never on time. They've already locked it in as a way of being. And that's saying it happens so often, I've kind of surrendered to this pattern. The last thing we want to talk about before we get you engaged in an activity is what's the cost and what's the benefit? Any behavior has a benefit and it has a cost. Well, the cost, as we've been talking, there's stress. Jeff gets in his car and he is late. So it might affect a little of his sense of self-esteem or who he wants to be. It does create some urgency in the nervous system. That kind of thing accumulates because very few of us are late for one thing without it having a domino effect. So then it compounds and away we go. But the other side that's so important is what's the benefit? Well, in Jeff's case, the benefit was the plants and the email. So you feel like you're accomplishing something when the mind keeps serving up the next thing to do. Secondly, that's kind of who you want to be, right? Most of us want to accomplish things, check it off the to-do list. So that's a great reason. It can also be, like I fall into, wanting to maintain a certain image. The other day, my apartment was going to be inspected for repairs. I wanted it to look tidy. So now I'm squeezing in the tidying before my meetings and so on. So there can be appearance or your home or whatever, or even as a professional, how you want to show up at work. But here's my favorite. When you sneak in something extra, one of the benefits can be fun or pleasure. If you have a long to-do list, and I'm just thinking of Leslie with 2 kids and loads to do and so on, her system could be going, I haven't had enough relaxation. I'm going to take a few minutes for me, a few minutes of downtime, a few minutes of whatever it is. Fitting in a little fun and play is a benefit when we tuck extras in. because our system is saying, I'm tired of just the to-do list. So there's 4 good reasons that we do a pattern, even though it ultimately doesn't serve us. All right, Jeff, so over to you and let's dig into what
Yeah.
it feels
So
like.
So make sure everybody has a pen and paper so we can do this experiential exercise. We're going to walk through
Mhm.
together. I just wanted to link to the last thing Lynn said first, and then I think Leslie has something to share as well. But I'm just thinking, I know when I'm going somewhere and thinking I have enough time, and I pull up my phone and I play my Scrabble app.
Yes.
Like I totally I want a little time for a little entertainment, little freedom. And I play my Scrabble app, and then off I go, and there has times that's made me late. Other times I've been able to do it, which probably gets me crap. But you can see I'm wanting some freedom.
Yeah. It was actually thanks to you, Jeff, that I realized there's this extra one, fun and freedom.
Yeah.
Let's-
And I think what's also really interesting to point out in terms of a benefit is that no matter the underpinning belief, so let's just say someone isn't running the pattern of like, I'm just going to squeeze more in. They're just running the lateness, losing track of time or whatever. And let's imagine I've got that underpinning belief of I'm just always late. It's just who I am. Well, one of the big benefits of being late in that scenario is that we love to be right. Our brain wants to be right. If I have a belief, you better believe that my reticular activating system is going to be searching for opportunities to prove me right. That proof in that stuck triangle doesn't just happen by chance. The brain searches for evidence to make me right. And then there's also the fun and freedom can come in at any point in there, right? If I'm just someone who likes freedom and autonomy, I might just decide, maybe not consciously, but I might just decide like, yeah, I see the time and I'll get there when I get there. Because to me, that feels very free and autonomous, right? You're not going to tell me what time I'm going to be somewhere. So that's just another couple of benefits that occurred to me while you were going through that, Lynn.
I love it. And I love the attitude that goes with it, which is nobody's going to control me. That's right. Beautiful.
Well said.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay, so let's move into the engagement activity. And so first, I need you to put this answer in chat, but just awareness. When you think of lateness, is lateness a behavior? It's something you do once in a while. A would be a behavior. Is it B, a habit, something you do fairly regularly? Or is it C, something you identify as, I'm a late person? And please just put in the chat A, B, or C. For myself, I would say for me, it's a habit. I'm probably late 25% of the time or 20% of the time. So it's regular enough that it's a habit. Please go ahead and put it in the chat. Or
habit for me.
it's a habit, right? Habit.
I hadn't noticed, Michelle.
I think I'm one of those Lynn squeeze, right? And sometimes I just know that I'm going to be late. Like today, I was like, probably a late one for the late class.
Right. Definitely. You're aware of that. Okay, so it's definitely a habit. All right. And so now I guess Michelle's grabbing a piece of paper, so I'll give her a second. But I'll pull up the PowerPoint for where we're going next.
And we got Shirley also in the category of habit as well.
Habit. Good. I can't see if Michelle's back, so I'm just gonna keep going. So
Sorry about that. I was grabbing a pen. I've got the paper, but didn't have the pen.
all right, excellent. Okay, so take a moment and bring to mind an example of a time when this pattern of lateness was playing out. And so what we're looking for here is a time when you made yourself late. And just give me a thumbs up when you've grabbed the time recently when you made yourself late. Okay. Now that you have a time where you've made yourself late, what was the belief that was driving the behavior? Take a moment, I'd like you to write that down. So we go back to my example. I realized that the belief that was driving my behavior is, if I don't do it now, I'll forget. And Lynn pointed out that I also had a second belief that was running in there. I have time. I think I've got plenty of time to do this. So those two beliefs were layered on top of each other. Like Lynn mentioned earlier, another belief could be I'm not good at managing time. What's the belief for you in that moment was driving your behavior? And please put it in the chat. Also, just a note, if you're in category C and the belief is about yourself, please move it to this moment specifically, and a belief it's about the moment, not about you identifying yourself. Or if the belief is external, you're late because of something else, move it to yourself and look at what your thoughts are. There's a thought that's creating lateness, and write that down, and I'm sorry, and share that in the chat after you've written it down.
So Jeffrey, this was something recent?
Ideally, a time you can remember, when
I'm
you were
getting so much better, I have a hard time remembering.
wow.
I'm getting much better.
Sorry, Jeff, what was the last part of that? What was the belief driving the?
Driving the behavior. It was the belief underpinning your behavior.
Okay.
Your thinking that was creating you being late.
So we've got, they know better than me, so I'll follow them. And I can't leave early. Right? That's something that plays out for me. I'm in something where I know I totally could leave early, but I'll force myself to stay to the end, because what will everybody else think if I duck out early?
That's a good one. I didn't even think that I do that, but you're right.
That's the beauty of sharing and going through these kinds of exercises together, right? I mean, it's great for everyone who can walk through this in the recording. And when we're here live, we get that. Well, I guess you get that in the recording too, but we're priming that pump, right? And it brings to mind all these hidden beliefs that I might have, and I'm just not aware of them, right? Please see previous conversation on blind spots.
Well, then I had one just yesterday where I was getting an Uber to go collect my car that had been serviced. And they said, it'll only take this much time, so we'll send the Uber at this time, which was 15 minutes later than I said, would you please send the Uber? And she said, oh, no, they always come early, it'll be fine. And I surrendered, and I was late because it was rush hour traffic, and she was obviously not thinking about that. So I give my power away when I listen to someone else who isn't maybe factoring being right on time. And I really hadn't had that in my awareness.
Well, and isn't it interesting in that example, Lynn, that now not only have you given your power away to someone else, but now you're also, it's a double whammy. Not only are you late, but you might be picking up that big stick thinking like, oh, I should have listened to myself, right? I should have
all the way
trusted my
there.
gut. Yeah. And it looks like you're not the only person, Shirley, saying that I have enough time was definitely the belief, but traffic said differently.
Very true. Excellent shares. And didn't hear anything from Susan, but if you put something in chat, that would be great. And we're going to shift to the next piece. So when you're believing that thought, how do you feel? And so if we look at the thought that I was sharing, I'll go back to the PowerPoint for a moment here. How do you feel? So we look at the thought that I was having when I believe that if I don't do it now, I'll forget. Then I feel worried. I get some level of anxiousness. And so this thought and this feeling are now driving my behavior. And so you could have feelings that are like anxious or guilt or overwhelm. Or perhaps when I'm in that place of I have enough time, I get into kind of actually relaxed, laissez-faire kind of state or feeling. And that, of course, creates me being late. The reminder here is that our emotions are signals, but they are not orders. We can feel and acknowledge our feelings without having to act on them in the moment when we slow things down to be really present. So please share in the chat what feelings come up for you when you're holding that belief?
And as we're waiting for that, I just want to really reiterate that point that you made, Jeff, right? Our feelings are a signal, not necessarily a demand for action. If you know, Jeff's example, if he's feeling like he's got enough time, so he's relaxed, that may or may not be the feeling he wants to tune into and trust in that moment, right? That may not be the demand that you want to follow through on, right? We've also got feeling self-confident, resentful, worried, sense of achievement or control. So really interesting to notice that although everyone's sharing an example of ending up late, right, of getting potentially what we would call a negative result or an undesired result, the feelings attached can be anywhere on the spectrum, right? We might be feeling really great about what's coming up in that scenario of lateness, and we might not be feeling so great. So interesting to note that.
Yeah, good share. That's a good point. The confidence on Shirley's makes sense. She's believing she has enough time, right? So let's go to the next step here. And we want to challenge the belief that you've chosen. So, is that belief true? And I'd like to talk it out with you guys a little bit here. Just for example, Shirley actually kind of noted her belief wasn't true in the sense, I have enough time. Well, obviously it's not true. You're late. You know, and that's one that I can get caught in when I'm in that. Oh, I got plenty of time. It's clearly the facts are it's not true. I wouldn't wind up being late. So when I'm also saying, if I don't do it now, I'll forget. Is that always true? Do I always forget? No, of course I don't. I could do this after. So, but there's plenty of times when I didn't forget and did it later. So what is it for you? I'd like to talk this out a little bit. How is your belief untrue? Or can we look at the belief and find any way that it's not true?
Well, I can jump in and say for me, it was abundantly not clear that they knew better. And you are so right, Leslie. The entire Uber ride, I'm going, this is not what I wanted. I have a commitment after. Now this is going to affect that. I'm just like, and then I'm breathing and trying to relax. And the next stop sign we're waiting at, I'm right back into the resenting loop of why did I listen to someone else when I knew when I wanted to leave?
Yeah. And Shirley's sharing, like, even Google can be wrong, right? Even if I'm using the Google map to tell me how long it's going to take, well,
Yeah.
that's not a real human driving on the road in that moment, right? Things change from moment to moment when we're out in the real world, out in the wild, so to speak.
And I'd like to jump back to Susan. She was saying like that thinking she has a few minutes, and then by getting it done, she'll save time later. I'd like to know what Susan came up with that. Is that true? Is it actually saving you time? Susan, feel free to speak up or put it in the chat.
Well, I don't always get interruptions that stop me from achieving what I want to achieve, but I do get a lot. Yes, I don't always get interruptions, so it's not totally true.
Right, and so is it actually saving time then?
No, not at the time. Not at the time.
Great, perfect.
Yeah.
This is important because.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, because I'm late. Yes. So I overestimate the time that I've got. So I do have a little bit of time, but I don't have the time I normally have. I think I have.
Excellent. And this part is really important because remember the stuck triangle, we're looking at proof, and the mind is looking for proof to support the belief. So it's really important to challenge the belief and see, wait a minute, it's not always true. There's lots of places where this doesn't actually fit. And this helps us kind of start to pull out of the stuck triangle. And in doing so, this actually moves us towards the growth triangle because we bring in new information that counters the belief. And so our system can start to soften and slowly let go or at least get us to the next stage where we can go deeper in changing a belief. But before that, I want to share one more thing. Am I capable of being on time? Now, this is a trump card almost, in the sense of, are you capable of being on time? When you ask yourself that question, what is the answer? Everyone's right. Everyone's
Yeah.
capable of being on time, right? So this really puts a big dent into that belief. And so what it's actually pointing to as well is, if you are capable of being on time, then you're actually in some way choosing to be late.
Love how that landed on the faces.
Yeah. So this is shifting from the mind into a place of a deeper ownership. And now we're going to go. So if you're choosing to be late, what are you choosing to do? Or what are you choosing instead of being on time? And so if I look at mine, of course, I was choosing to water the plants. I was choosing to do an email. Basically, I'm putting tasks, making tasks more important than me being on time, or making all these little things more important. So what were you notice in your scenario? What were you choosing to make more important than being on time? And I'd love everyone, once you have a few of them, to share.
Some last minute tasks. And Jeff, you might just want to pull that slide back up for just a second.
Okay. Thank you, Leslie.
So we've got choosing some last minute tasks, being agreeable with the staff person, choosing tasks to reduce the stress of not getting things done. Earlier we were mentioned, right? I might be choosing freedom or fun or a sense of control. I might be choosing achievement, right? I might even be choosing to rebel, right? I might just say, you know what? Yeah, I am going to sit down and play my game because whatever, I can be late for this.
Well, I know when I think I have plenty of time, I can choose my puzzle or my Scrabble game for sure,
Yeah.
Leslie.
Yeah, and Shirley's saying freedom for sure. Yeah.
Freedom, right? Yeah, that's awesome. We see that. So next part is a little heavier. We're going to look at, what are the costs that we are paying for these choices? And now I want to take a little time with this and go deeper. Like, there's costs we pay personally. There could be costs for paying professionally, and there could be costs for paying in our relationships.
Mhm.
So take a few moments to write down the costs that you're paying for making these other things more important than being on time. And so in my example, of course, I'm being disrespectful to the person I'm meeting for my appointment because now I'm late. And that can also, if I'm doing it habitually, a cost I pay is I break the trust. So I'm actually causing damage to the relationship by being late. And I get frustrated at times with myself when I do it. So it affects my self-esteem. What are some of the costs you're paying personally, professionally, or in your relationships?
I think one cost that's really important to name that people may or may not get to is the price that we pay personally. When I am late, yeah, well, Susan's naming it, right? Frustration with self, right? And I stress my system, and that works against my immune system, which creates, and when I create stress chemicals, Shirley saying self-esteem because I feel like I'm less than. So yeah, never mind. You all are already there, right? It's that cost that we pay when it comes to our sense of self-worth and self-respect and self-trust. Not only do we potentially erode the trust of others around us, they can't count on me to be on time if I'm always late, but I can't even count on myself now, right? And how heavy a cost is that when we feel like the only person in the world I can depend on is me, and suddenly I can't even depend on me, right? Yeah, and the people I'm meeting lose faith in my commitment. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So as you're creating this list, I'd like you to take a moment and just sit with it. And as you read all the costs, notice how you feel. Now, this can feel heavy for sure. And that is kind of the point of looking at the costs. See, when we're in the stuck triangle, our mind is so busy justifying that it is not seeing the costs. And so we run it very habitually. And so the seeing the costs, sitting with them and feeling the weight of what it's like to be paying them is really a powerful motivator for us to change. So it's a very fundamental part of this exercise.
And also named here was just the feeling like I'm being disrespectful. Right.
Yeah, makes sense. When I think of the ones I was sharing, I'm saying like, I'm disrespectful, I'm breaking the trust. Wait a minute, like, I hear myself say those out loud. I'm doing those things. Like I'm not thinking that when I'm saying water the plants, send an email, or play my game. I'm not thinking costs at all. And that's why it's so important, because then I get to align with who I really want to be, opposed to just running in old programs and old beliefs.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go to the next more empowering piece is replacing the old limiting belief, the old program, with a new empowering one. So what's an empowering thought that could support you being on time or even early? Take a moment and think about that and write down what's an empowering thought. If I look at mine, I could change my thought to, I have time after my appointment to handle the to-do list or to handle my tasks. Some other possible ones I'll share is there are tools and strategies that can help me be on time. So there's things I can use to help me. And if you have kids or you're doing for others a lot, then you might be able to pick a belief around my needs are just important as others' needs, and I'm committed to meeting them. So finding a balance instead of putting everyone else first and then making yourself late, trying to take care of all those things, you can find a balance of knowing, hey, my needs are important too. And keeping my self-esteem high is important too. And you'll find a balance. I can appreciate the staff's input and still respect myself asking for what I want. Oh, good. Lynn's talking about her thought around the Uber. Yeah, very good.
I think the reason I don't speak up is I don't want to make the person wrong in the sense or say, you're wrong. But I need to have the thought, thank them for their perspective. That's great. And you know what you feel comfortable with. So I still would like it, because at the end of the day, I can have the Uber whenever I want. I don't have to listen to her advice. But it's, if I don't think about it carefully, as you're pointing out, Jeff, and kind of rehearse it, that, defaulting to kind of pleasing or agreeing comes very easily for me. So I have to keep my eye on that.
Good share. Well said then. I'd like to hear from some people in the group. Did you come up with a new empowering thought? If not, let us know. Let us support you.
So we got one here. If I made the appointment, I am capable of planning my day and leaving enough time to arrive on time. And if I'm meeting someone and I feel that this connection is important, then I want to be on time. Right. So those are two great examples. Right. If I can make an appointment, I can schedule the day accordingly. Right. And if I'm going to meet with someone, well, obviously that's an important connection. So I want to demonstrate through my actions how important and valuable the connection is. Right. Yeah. I can be more aware of time and give myself an earlier cutoff point to stop squeezing another job in. Yes, absolutely. Right. I can say, okay, if I have to be here at this time, that means I must leave by whatever time. Right. In fact, that's a strategy I often use. I will set an alarm in my phone for the time not the time I need to leave, 10 minutes before the time I need to leave. So I can, you know, have a quick bathroom break, put on my shoes, you know, answer the inevitable last minute question that comes up as I'm walking out the door. Right?
Mm.
Well, and Leslie, that just uncovered a belief that I just thought of, which is if I'm 10 minutes early, I'm wasting time.
Mm.
And then I went, no, that gives you your, as you just said, a bathroom break, catch your breath, be relaxed, look around. I don't know what, but I mean, I have to change it from wasting time to honoring myself.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really good. And it allows you to show up how you really want to be instead of rushing into the thing and busy mind carrying all the things from before right into the appointment where you now can't quite get settled. You actually know that 5 or 10 minutes before is that grounding time. And I was just going to add to Leslie's strategy as well. I know for me, when I'm on point, I just write down things. I'll take a piece of paper, I'll write down water the plants, resend the email, I'll leave it on my table, and then off I go. When I come back, I don't forget because I wrote it down. And then I just do it later. Okay. You know, there's lots of little strategies that can help us keep our commitment and stay on time.
And Shirley, you had something you wanted to
You have time for a real quick story.
Sure do.
Years ago, way before personal development, I had a lady that used to walk in front of my house, and that's how I knew her. And she invited me to go to this deli for coffee. And I said, sure, let's go. Well, I'll meet you at 11 o'clock on such and such. She's excited. I'm happy to have met this new friend. I stop at London Drugs and decide to download some pictures. I get them in and then they disappear. So it took me way longer than I thought. I'm rushing over to meet her. She was not very happy. She dressed me down and said, you know, my time is valuable. And when I make an appointment with someone, I like to know that they're going to be here. I was so embarrassed.
Oh.
We had our lunch, but I never really ever connected with that woman again because of the way I felt.
Mm.
And I see her around town. We say hi. We're acquaintances now. We never became friends. And I blame it on the fact that I didn't respect our time.
Mm.
What a
That was
powerful lesson, Shirley. That's
a
great.
very powerful lesson.
You know, as much as those hurt,
Mm.
that is also what has us break out of that stuck triangle and realize, hey, my behavior is causing a problem. And now a friendship that could have been fostered didn't.
I had lots of excuses. Oh, the damn machine.
Well, this is it. When we think of our
Now I
identity,
realize, well, you could have did those pictures another time.
that's it.
You made the wrong thing priority.
Well, that's a great point. In our identity continuum, it shows that we can fall into the justifier very quickly and then feel right about all of our reasons or excuses. And again, just keeps us more stuck in that triangle. And you remind me, Shirley, of an experience I had years ago, because I used to be late. Not 5 minutes. I mean, half an hour or 45 minutes. I just didn't care. I was like, oh, people arrive when they arrive. And I literally thought like that. So if people arrived half hour late, sure, I do it all the time. And so I remember being with a friend who was doing personal development, and I arrived 35 minutes late. And when I got there, he said, I don't do this. I don't sit for half an hour for someone to show my time is important. I'm not meeting with you today. Next time you can be on time. And he left. And I was like, oh, what just happened? What's his problem? Like, you know, and then later next time we met, I had a talk with him and like, God, I've always been late. I don't even hold it as a thing. I didn't realize I was disrespectful. I didn't realize I was destroying trust. I mean, I just was really unaware. So I think it's really important when we have somebody who is able to kind of reflect back to us, hey, your behavior is damaging to yourself and others. Like those are big catalysts. You know, after that, I really got, okay, how do I get on time? And then I realized I had terrible skills around it. So I wound up being like an hour early all the time. Because I was so afraid of being late. You know, and over time, of course, I've gotten much better, you know, but those are powerful catalysts, those moments.
In Jeff's defense, I actually had written down when we talked about remember a time when you were late. I wrote down restaurant days. All of Jeff's growing up years, we were running a restaurant. I was always behind the clock and I was always running late, and I could always justify because I did so much. I was superwoman. So my children probably learned. Jenny actually went the other way. She went, I got to be there. The house could be a mess. Everything could be falling apart, but I got to be there. Well, obviously the other child picked up the, the bad habit. Yeah, interesting.
Thank you for sharing.
And I do really like that we've gotten to that place also of recognizing that, you know, there can be the other side of it where if I don't feel like there's a problem with being late, right? And even noticing what can happen internally when someone calls us out on a pattern that might be destructive. We may not even be at the place of awareness that my pattern of lateness or whatever the pattern is destructive for others. And notice where our mind can go when that gets pointed out to us. Notice how easy it can be to defend, to prove why we're doing it, to justify our position, right? Again, it's that mind really wants to be right about everything, right? And so it's just an interesting point to really think of, like, you know, if someone's upset at me, sometimes that's totally not a me problem, that's a them problem. And it's always worth exploring, okay, if this is how someone's feeling about my behavior, is that who I want to be, right? Is that the person that I want to be? Is this how I want to show up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great point, Leslie. There's information there. So if we don't wrong and attack it, push it away, we can be curious a little bit and see, I wonder what they're seeing that I'm doing that I can take ownership of, or if there's a change needed. It's a great point. Well, I'd like to open the floor to hear feedback from everybody, what today's session was like and what stood out for you. What did you notice?
I really appreciated unpacking this. And for me, I'm becoming really aware of the costs of this pattern behavior in terms of the panic and the stress and jam packing the schedule. So I think what I really like, Leslie, what you said earlier, where it's almost like figuring out like what tools will help me to be successful. So like, you know, instead of setting that clock as, okay, this is the time I have to leave, but 10 minutes earlier, right? And like the other thing that I'm thinking is I've got to like really get some tools on when I recognize that I'm going to be late and I'm in a situation where I'm not honoring myself. And I'm like, you know, watching it kind of go and being like, okay, how am I going to get out of what I am right now to get into what I need to get into next? And so I feel like I almost need to equip like a toolkit of like a few things that I can quickly grab in that moment and just be like, remember, this is what I need to do right now. And don't be so concerned about disrespecting the people that I might be in the meeting or, you know, situation before the situation that I'm going to end up being late for. Right. So that's kind of where I'm thinking is that what's going through my head right now.
Really good. So I'm hearing part of it is keep your attention on the first commitment, you know, that's the priority. And then what are some strategies that can help you achieve it? And it was
also being really mindful of that time piece, like during the commitment that I'm in right now, right? And just like being okay, well, you know, to going back to what Leslie said, like if I know something is starting right after, then don't just like plan to end it like right at that time, but plan to end it like 10 minutes earlier, because then, you know, I'll probably end it at that, you know, like at the true time that it was supposed to end. But if I'm already starting to wind it down 10 minutes before and giving that like awareness to the other people that, hey, you know, I need to be out of here. I need to be done this. And then if not, then I can give myself permission to leave without feeling like, okay, what am I supposed to do in this situation with this current block of time and not be disrespectful to the next block of time, right? And also myself, right? And it's like, it's very stressful and exhausting and creates so much unpleasurable emotions.
Yes.
And also just like thinking about like what I can cut down and slow down on, and making some of those choices and decisions so I'm not so jam-packed constantly.
Well, and I want to add to this, and I think Lynn's going to have something to share as well. The behaviors and the tools are helpful, but still it's the mind you're going to have to look at, changing the thoughts. So those are supportive, but it's changing the beliefs that are keeping you caught that's going to make the biggest difference.
So, and I think the one replace belief is really this, someone, I don't know who said it, but honoring myself. Like, I think that this is like really where it'll be like, I need to do this to honor myself.
Right.
Because that like really hits home, because it's always about like the person that I'm helping in that like time block and saying stop. So yeah.
That's really the point I was going to make, Michelle, is if I speak up and say, I need to leave today's meeting, I need to leave 10 minutes early because there's a meeting right at the top of the hour that I have to be at. I feel that person is being such a great professional. Like, I'm impressed when people speak up. So
Yeah.
it's that behavior, wanting to honor yourself, as you said, by speaking up.
Exactly. And not being concerned about what so like I'll give you an example of like what happened today. And so I was just at this little field trip for my daughter, and the teacher was like coming back, and so I was like, okay, should I leave the kids here or should I not? And I was thinking about this last time, Lynn, where you had kind of done the gas pedals.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm not doing the gas pedals today because I'm not having this like, should I dial in? Should I not? Will I be late? So I wasn't having any of that, but I was, but it wasn't as many thoughts. Like that last time, it was explosive. Like there was so much going on. I was like, but today it was really like, okay, should I leave these kids here unattended or not? And it was really interesting for me because I feel like I could have easily turned around to one of those parents and said, you know what, like, I know I'm supposed to, like, I was the driver, and I kind of feel like I'm responsible for these kids, but like, like, can I leave now? Because like, we were supposed to be gone 15 minutes ago. I don't know where the teacher is, but like, you're here and you're an adult. So, and giving that like almost line of thought before to say, geez, the teacher's not here. And like, as I'm just watching the clock, but I should have like said something. And this is where I'm not honoring myself.
Yeah.
And just like feeling so responsible for other people. And I just have to just really think of it in a different way.
And I think, it's so great that Jeff pointed that out. The reality is, for me, I've tried a million different strategies and I've dialed it into the ones that I've found to work for me through trial and error.
Mhm.
And the work, the effort that pays off the most is looking at those beliefs, right? Watching what's happening in my mind.
Yeah.
That really is powerful. And
It-
we've also got here, Susan just sharing, like, unpacking those beliefs around behind the lateness, and also looking at the cost benefit analysis, having the visual of the stuck triangle, questioning that belief, acknowledging the feeling, and remembering that I'm at choice. Yeah. So just, it's really about looking at all of those layers, and the deeper the layer we hit, the less effort required to make meaningful change. Right?
Yes.
When we're just trying to change all the stuff on the surface, we'll be efforting for a long time. And
Mhm.
when we pause and go deeper, we can create
Mhm.
meaningful change with much less time and effort involved. Right?
Mhm. Yeah, that's so true. You can just make that decision. Like the mind doesn't go like so flippy floppy. Like even between like the 2 weeks ago compared to this, I was like, wow, I'm not as like gas go as I was last.
Right. Learning to manage and take control of your mind is powerful, really important. So of course,
Like,
we
yeah.
do a lot of that in the inner balance
Mhm.
program. So I just want to also let you guys know in the chat, I put the Facebook group. If anyone's not in the Facebook group, please join us. We can chat about all these sorts of things and stay in touch with when we're doing our next table talk, which is every second Thursday.
Mhm. Yeah, and always let us know if there's topics that you'd like us to dive into, anything you want to explore, any other patterns that come up in your life that you struggle with. We're happy to unpack them in future topics. We've got a really exciting topic coming up in time for the holidays. We're going to be looking at expectations at our next table talk. And stay tuned for some really good conversation in the new year where we'll be talking about willpower. So any other topics that come to mind, you can always drop us a line at hello@expandingyou.com. Join us on the Facebook group. And as always, thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your time. And for those of you watching the replay at home, you can always reach out for support. If you run into any snags or challenges working through this work, by all means, reach out. We love to support people on their journeys of personal growth and evolution. Well, thanks for being with us.
Definitely. That was great, everybody. You'll receive an email with this recording and the worksheet that goes with it. Have a
Yeah, and
wonderful
I'm just
day.
going to put
Oh,
a
go ahead.
plug in. You know, so many people can't make a precise time like the 12 noon that we do it. So please reassure them that they can get the recording and have conversation with you about it after, maybe do the sheet. It's a great way to build friendships and connections. And we know that not everybody can make the exact time.
Question, do we have to register every time or if we're each time that comes up? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Have a great day, everyone.
everyone.
Thanks
You
so much
too.
for joining.
Bye.
Bye-bye.